Today is April the 13th,
Or
2014. We are very happy that Brandon wanted to come up and film us in our home that we have lived in for 56 years. We will be here until the 15th, and we will be spending our rest of our lives together over to Belmore in Kaysville. And we're very, very excited about moving into Jamestown, senior citizens. And we're excited about not having any yard work, worrying about the sprinklers and all those responsibilities that Jack was always able to do, and very ambitious in doing it before he ever went golfing. We're thankful that now that he's unable to do those and my body's wearing down as much as his has, and we're very thrilled and happy that we will not have to do that anymore. They have care center over there, and yard work and shoveling the snow, and no neighbors, no kids, no dogs barking, we hope. They can have dogs, so there may be some barking. But we're thankful for this wonderful blessing in our life, and that our children have worked so diligently.
Tell us how you and Dad first met.
Well, my girlfriend had a blind date for me, and she says, "Valerie, are you willing to go?" And I said, "Sure." And so I went on 4 blind dates. I said, "I don't think, Beverly, I'm going to be able to go with these Air Force men anymore. I don't think I want to go again, so don't get me any more blind dates." And sure enough, one more, Valerie, just this one time. And so I met Jack. He had this leather brown jacket, and he had a crop of hair with curly curls and beautiful blue eyes, and he looked like Marlon Brando, the movie star, and he was a knockout.
Is that true, Dad? Were you a knockout? Was she a knockout? What did you like when you first saw Mom? The very first time you saw Mom, what did you love about her?
Her what?
She's trying to give you a hint. Her red hair? Did you like her red hair? She was pretty tall and skinny too, huh? Like she is now. Okay, so tell us about your blind date.
So he didn't take me long to find out he didn't have any money. We never went to a show, we never went to dinner, but we'd always go to my friend Beverly's, to their home. She was the youngest in their family, and their mother and dad were marvelous. And we'd go up there and play cards, pinochle, and I hated pinochle. But I kept enduring, but it didn't last too long before he got serious. So, first night I met him was April the 19th, 1950. He was getting too serious, and I said, "Hey, we got to cool off here." And he said, "Well, I think we need to get married." And I said, "Married? We don't know each other long enough. It's only been through short time." And he said, "Well, I think we can make it." And I says, "Well, if you think we can, maybe we better give it a try." So that's what we did. The bishop was a little disappointed because he wanted me to go to the temple. But anyway, I said, well, maybe that will happen. And I hope it's sooner than I think it's going to be. And so I said, yes, okay, I'll get married, but there was no fancy thing about it or nothing. I don't remember anything about that. He just said it. So we set the date, was married in my mother and dad's front living room by Bishop Jasper Dixon. We were married at my mother's home at 806 Canyon Road in Ogden. And the bishop came and married us that night. We didn't have a big crowd, no reception, but it was lovely. The family was there, and we was very, very fortunate because Jack had a lot of friends at Hillfield. One volunteered his gift, photographer. His friend from the bakery made us a beautiful cake with 3 tiers. And he borrowed a suit and a white shirt and a tie from a good friend that happened to fit. And my folks had some, I believe some ice cream to go with the cake. And it was just a simple ceremony, but very, very humble. Our bishop, Dixon, who we love very much, he is the one that married us. And so I was very happy that he was able to do that. So Shirley and Edward had invited us to their home in Idaho. And so the first night we stopped in a motel, I don't remember the name of it. And the next morning we got up and went and had a lovely breakfast. And then we went to Shirley and Edward's. And while we was there, Jack said, "How would you like to go back to Indiana and meet my parents?" And I says, "On what? We only have $15. And he said, "Well, I've got a sister that owns a store and she's got money. And I'll pay her back." And I said, "Well, maybe you better telegraph her then." And he did, and she said she would be happy to send $50. A lot of money then. And so we went on a honeymoon to Indiana, August 4th, humid, hot, and I wasn't used to it. And I was panting all the time I was there. Very, very mucky. Sheets felt like they needed to be dried. It was just, but we had a wonderful, wonderful honeymoon. The first week, of course, he wanted to go skinny dipping in that mud hole.
Did ya? Did you go skinny dipping?
No, but he wanted me to. He did. I said, "I do not expose my body to that mud. And you can pay me to get in there." So he hopped in and away he went. And then when he came back, I don't remember having any towels, but anyway, we were on our way home. And the next time, he said, "Well, how would you like to go out and meet my sister out in Timbuktu?" And I said, "Oh, anything, yeah, I've got to meet all your family. I'm anxious to meet them." So we went to Loretta's house. That was a farm and the dogs, and she was very loving, and her husband, about 25 years older than her, he fell in love with me. I think it was my red hair. So she was always just a little bit jealous. But anyway, he and she both, and Jack was her baby. Because Jack, whenever he had a few problems with his dad and mother, he would go to Loretta's, and there he would stay for 2 or 3 days. And she was never able to have any children, so she took him under her wing and spoiled him rotten. Right? Rotten. Remember that? So then, a few days later, we went to Anderson. We got to meet his oldest brother, John, his wife, and their 2 children, Diana and Debbie. And we had a marvelous time. They treated us wonderful, and they were very, very humble and wonderful people, and I enjoyed it so much. I fell in love with all his family members. Then we came back to his mother's and dad's, and his mother was a marvelous cook. She put on a big spread. They never put anything in the refrigerator after dinner. They just took a tablecloth and threw it over. And that night we'd have leftovers. And none of us died from food poisoning, so I think it was pretty wonderful.
A lot less cleanup, huh?
And they lived about a block from the mailbox, so he took me down there and showed me the place where, at the park where he swang, and we just had a marvelous honeymoon from start to finish, and it went on for, I believe, 2 full weeks.
Wow.
So then I said, Jack, you got the money to come on this trip now. How are we going to get home? And so his father must have sensed that we didn't have any money. So he said, what would you like for a wedding gift? And I said, a trip home. He said, in other words, money. So he gave us $75. He was a little more generous than the $50 that we got from Aunt Eileen. So I think we stayed in the motel one night, and I think the next night we stayed in the car in I don't remember. Anyway, it was pretty secluded. And we had, when we got home from our honeymoon, I think we had $14 left. And that was going to be great. So we looked for a little apartment. And this elderly couple needed a little more money for their lifetime, so they made an apartment with the bathroom and a bedroom and a kitchen. And so we rented from them. I don't remember the amount. It couldn't have been more than $15 a month. And so then I said, gee, what are we going to live on? Because he only got one check. The wives didn't get one for quite a while later. So I thought, well, I better go see if I can't find a job. And so I went to an interview up on next to the McCady Hospital where I was born. And the Hobbs, they owned a drugstore, wonderful people. They were Greek. They had a very good, lot of customers. So that supplement helped us to pay our rent. And we just, for our entertainment, our friends would come over and we'd play cards, or like I said, I don't ever remember going to dinner or to a movie. It was all things that didn't cost a penny. And it was wonderful. We had a good...
So Dad was in the service, and you lived in this apartment, and then when did Dad have to go away? Did he have to go to the war?
Yeah, then they decided to transfer him back to Texas. San Antonio, I believe. And so he was there quite a while, so I think that he said, well, why don't you come on the train or something? I must have gone. And then we looked for a place there. And then we wasn't there too long. And then I believe that we went to, his next calling was Korea, but I was back home by then. And my mother, I said, I think I probably better get some place to live, hadn't I? And she said, why would you? You live with us, she said. Stephen was born then. Stephen came along 11 months later. So I moved in with them, and then I went job hunting. And I told Jack when he left, I said, the more money we can save, when you get out of the service, that'll be money towards something better. I had no idea that it would be to South Carolina. And I was excited because I had never left Utah other than Colorado before. So it was just marvelous. So then while he was gone, and it was only for 11 months, and he knew when he came home that he would be going to South Carolina. And I was still excited. And so we had just bought Stephen a beautiful new bed to put in my mother's little bedroom. And so he tied that crib securely on that 1958 or 9 Oldsmobile. It had a 6-cylinder though, it was a good car. And he tied it on top of it, and we took the bed with us. And when we got to South Carolina and rented this apartment, he was working in the fire department, 24 hours on and 24 hours off. So no television, no sewing machine, nothing but Stephen and me. So my entertainment was going from window to window. We lived up high, and they were all below us. And hoping that their blinds would be open so I could see some activity. I was so lonely and homesick. And I just thought, oh gee, how much longer can I do this? This is just the pits. Well, anyway, I don't remember how long we lived there. I know it was a good month because we paid the rent. And I said, Jack, I've saved money. You sent money home that I did save. And I was working while he was gone. We have $1,000. What do you think about us getting a house trailer and moving in a trailer park? And he just looked at me and said, good idea. So that's what we did. And when we got in that little trailer park, I was so happy. The woman next door was a registered nurse. She wanted to go back to work, but no one to attend those boys. And I said, Esther, go to work. We can't make the payments on her trailer if I don't have the money. She was tickled to death. Her husband was a master sergeant, so they had a pretty good income, but they weren't too frugal. They didn't know how to save money. They spent a lot of it. So that's what happened. She started work, and I started babysitting. And we made that house payment just like we did later in life when we came here to this home. And it was such a happy time, even though my mother was sick, very sick. So Jack, the kids all says, what do you want for Christmas, Mother? And she says, just Valerie and the kids and Stephen and Michael to come home. Michael was born then. And it was 4 years between Steve and Mike. And so we decided. He took us home and he said, I'm going to leave you there to be with your mother. She needs you now. We'll figure out how you're going to get home later. And so that's what we did, and I was there 1 month with her. But a week before the month was up, my mother was very, very sick, and she knew that she was going to die. She didn't want me there. But about a week before that, she says, call up and see if it's time for you to be going home. Jack needs you there with the kids, and you need to go home, Valerie. And I said, well, what about you? And she said, I will be fine, and don't you worry about me. I've lived my life, and now you've got to learn to live yours. And I said, okay. So I called, and they said, well, we'll put you on something. Yes, if someone cancels, then you can get out, but otherwise we're booked. So every day I would call, and they'd say, no cancellations. Well, we'll call you. How about that? I said, okay, I'll have my bags packed and I'll be waiting. And so it was just exactly the call that we got, and we left to go to South Carolina back home. And I had Michael and Stephen, and all the soldier men were very, very kind in helping me with Michael. He was still about in my arms, so he was still a baby. And so, and Mom and Dad, of course, hard to say goodbye to them. They had us home all those years, and for us to leave, it was very, very lonely. But we were thrilled to get back home in South Carolina, and a week to the day, the telegram came that my mother had passed away. And I remember thanking the Lord that she was gone and out of her misery. And before I left, she tried to give me a wristwatch, and I said, Mom, I have a watch Jack bought me. You give that to Bethy. She needs it. She was 2.5 years older than I was. When we got home, things just continued to have the Hobbs family take turns come down visiting Don, and Mother came with Loretta and even Betty's wife, Betty, Donnie's wife, and we just had a wonderful time together. And that is where Michael was born, was in South Carolina at the Air Force Base. But he was only home 1 week. When I woke up in the night and I wondered why my breasts were so full, because he hadn't awakened earlier. And so I went in, and Michael was like he was not going to move, almost like he had passed on. He was kind of stiff. And so I went back and got Jack. He was sleeping on the end of Steve's bed in a crib, because we only had 2 bedrooms in the new trailer. And so Jack said, well, I don't know. But Michael was just lifeless, so we got through until that morning. He was supposed to go in. We had a doctor appointment to have him circumcised. And the doctor said, we called and said he couldn't make it. And he says, you take him to the hospital right now. Don't wait. So we did. We went there to the hospital. And he was there 3 weeks. And during those 3 weeks, then they had no idea what was wrong with Michael. They had him in a private a ward where no one else could go, because they couldn't figure what his prognosis was. So then finally the neurosurgeon was called in. They asked for our consent, and we said yes, anything. And they tapped his brain and found that he had a blood clot on the left side. And so after 3 weeks, the neurosurgeon said, just take him home and enjoy him. He says, he may never walk. I don't know. I can't guarantee that he won't, but I can't guarantee that he will. So we took him home. And Stephen, he loved him, and we loved him, and we still love him, and he's 58. And he's the only one that didn't leave us. He's been right here for us to make us happy. And the last few weeks, now that we're moving into a new home, living here 56 years, we had a wonderful life. Jack was so healthy, was able to take care of all the yard. I remember him and me out leveling the ground so we could plant the new grass, and how hard and diligent we worked. And we loved it from the word go. Even though there was no school, no church, it was just sand. And the neighbor behind came over with a loaf of bread to welcome me in, Lucille Spinlove. And the ward was wonderful. The neighbors were good. We never had any problems with any of them, and made a lot of friends. After living here for 56 years, Carol Ann used to live in Kaysville, and she'd go up and see this new housing. It was a James Court, like for retirement people. And she thought, oh gee, someday I hope I can get my mother and dad over there. And so she never did tell me that, though. But anyway, it just turned out to be that she called me and said, you want to go look at a house? And I said, no, I don't think so. Not in Kaysville. I said, Michael probably wouldn't be able to have the transportation. She said, well, where does he work? And I says, Park. And she says, give me his number. I'm going to call over there and see what I can find out. And they said yes, that Mike qualifies 100% because of his disability, and he'd been over there 30 years. They'd pick him up any place he needed to be picked up. So there was no reason why we couldn't go look at the houses, but in my heart I was thinking, this is crazy. But I pondered it and thought about it, and after looking at those 2 places, I thought, I can't leave Sunset. I can't leave all my friends. I've known them for a lifetime. It's only 2 miles wide. I know everyone in Sunset by their name. But I did. And anyway, the next day I told her we couldn't move. And the next day she called and said, what do you think? Maybe you need to look at the house again. I said, well, it's not the house, it's leaving family, the neighbors and the board and everything else. And she's all, Mom, just come look at it. She said, now just remember these words that I'm saying. If you don't move now, maybe in the next 5, 6, 7 years, you will wish you had. And that night as I prayed, I received my answer. The words that she said came in a loud voice, move. So then I changed my mind again. And this time she was up in Wyoming, and I know I ruined her day when I said I just can't go through with it. Even though I think that the Lord wants me to move, I can't do it. And the phone rang, and it was Marilyn. They were in Hawaii, and she says, just a minute. We were going to get on the loudspeaker so Scott can hear you, and we'll have a 3-way conversation. And he gave me a beautiful, beautiful reason why I needed to move. I am so thankful that my sister got me active in the church when we came back from South Carolina. She said, you need to go to church. Thankful that she got me active, that we were blessed. Jack promised my mother that he'd take her to the temple. And so he started working on it, and I says, I want it to be pretty soon. And when we were married 10 years, then we were able to go to the temple and be sealed for time and all eternity. And then we took Stephen and Michael.
Which temple, Mom?
In the Salt Lake Temple. And it was a joy to see their 2 little faces there. And then I prayed about more children. I was worried and afraid that I might have another problem, and like I did with Michael, and I was almost afraid to have any for a while. So it was 4 years before I had my beautiful little first daughter, a little angel, Marilyn. And that was a joy. We had so much fun together, and like I said before earlier tonight, I couldn't go out and shake the rugs without her on my hip. And then 4 years later, I was blessed with another daughter, Carol Ann. And she was pretty independent and she didn't need all that extra attention like I gave Marilyn.
She needed a spanking every day.
Yeah, she was pretty bullheaded. So I'm thankful to our Heavenly Father that He got us on the right path, that we were able to be sealed in the temple. And that is when the happiest day, really, of my lifetime. And the word all went down with us, and after we went over to the Nebuchadnezzars and had cake and ice cream, they bought a lovely cake to celebrate the occasion. And I'm thankful that our Heavenly Father has been there for me, especially the last 2.5 years. Giving me the strength to be able to do what I had to do. And I'm thankful that Jack is still here with us. After having myeloid acute leukemia 30 years ago, they gave us 6 weeks, and here he is. He's such a determined, strong man. And I'm thankful that our Heavenly Father listened to my prayers when I prayed that I don't want to go to work. Please help Jack to be able to be here so that we have the income to where I can stay home. And I babysat, starting right out so we could make a house payment, because he couldn't get on in Hillfield and it was frozen. So he worked at the gas station, worked on the garbage route, and I babysat, and we made our house payments every month. By paying our tithing, we were able to keep going. We never went to movies or out to dinner, but we did get our house paid. the bishop came and said, well, now that Jack's out of work, how about going to the bishop's storehouse to get your food? And I said, no. We've got food in the basement. We've got enough income. We'll be fine. We've never been on church welfare our entire life. And I say this humbly, thanking the Lord for this special day today. We never know how long we're going to live. And we certainly want to be together when we have this last farewell. And I say this humbly in the name of thy beloved Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.